Hello there, friends and sane persons, and welcome to another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. My name is Kyle, and Wednesday Whimsy is a short show that I do every Wednesday evening where I talk about a board game, a top 10 list, or some other topic that happens to be on my mind. Usually board game related, and in this case, it is. Anyway, I'm not going to stretch this one out. I should be on a plane right now as you're watching this, hopefully heading home from my trip to Eurovision. And I figured a good time to talk about being on a plane, or a good topic to talk about while I'm on a plane, is games about travel. Now, these are not games about trains, right? You could make a list of the top 10 train games easily. These are games where there's some sort of element of traveling or moving around in the game as part of the game's mechanisms. There's a lot of games that involve that, right? I mean, people and pieces have to move, but these are games where the travel aspect really feels kind of central to the game. I'm not going to go on much more about that. It's a pretty straightforward list. I do have, well, toward the end, we're going to bog down into familiar favorites, but at least sort of the bottom half of the sort of higher numbers are going to be games that I don't talk about all that often, which is kind of refreshing. So let's get started with number 10. So number 10 is a game that when it came out, I thought it was just the most amazing game that I could ever even really imagine. This game, I was surprised it didn't win Spiel des Jahres. It came out in, I guess, the 2007 time frame. I remember playing it when I was in Germany. The game is called Jenseits von Theben, and it looks like, I guess the English name is Thebes. But what you do in this game, let me pull up a picture here, is, well, for some reason it's not working. Well, anyway, it's a game. Here we go. Sorry about that. So it's a game where what you are is an archaeologist, and you are kind of going through the ancient world, and you're using your time. This might have been the first game with a time track. I don't know for sure about that, but I remember discovering it. It's the first game I played with one for sure. And you're going to go, and every action you do has a certain amount of time cost. And eventually you're going to go to these archaeological sites and dig stuff out. You're going to sort of put whatever resources you want into this dig. And I always referred to that little dial as an alethiometer because it was about the same time I was reading the Golden Compass sort of Dark Materials series. Anyway, more information than you wanted. You're going to then pull tokens out of this bag, and those tokens will either have artifacts or they'll be just dirt. And the dirt goes back in, and so these digs will get a little less productive as time goes by. But most of the game is about sort of getting around the world and investing in balloons and cars and other things that can help you to travel around the world more quickly and more efficiently. It's definitely a game where the travel aspect is pretty high, and it's a pretty fun game. It's relatively simple. So if you're looking for something super complicated, maybe keep looking. But as a great sort of game that's fun for people of any ages and has a nice sort of sense of exploration and discovery, as well as a high sense of travel, Jenseits von Theben is a great entry. Let's go on next to my number 9. So the next game is all about travel. In fact, that's really all it is travel, travel, travel. It's a racing game, and the game is called Fast Sloths. So Fast Sloths is a game where you are going to be trying to get sloths around this racetrack. Uh, right, you're trying to sort of manipulate where the sloths are and get to certain goals. But the sort of main aspect of the game is that the sloths themselves won't move. And so you're really trying to, this is an interesting version, you're really trying to sort of activate these different types of animals that are going to be able to pick up and carry the sloths in different ways to try and get them, to where they need to be. It's a pick up and deliver game where what you're delivering is these sloths. And so it's very much about trying to get these sloth tokens to travel across the map, even though they will not move by themselves. So it's very much a logistical game, and there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts in this game, but it's a really interesting game about traveling and trying to get somewhere without doing any work. Kind of like another game that will be on the list a little bit later. Anyway, it's by mad scientist board game designer Friedman Friese, and it's a fun one. It's one to look out for. That's my number 9, Fast Sloths. Let's go on now to number 8. My number 8 is an older game. It came out in 2010, and I remember when it came out, I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And it definitely has an interesting flair of travel about it. The game is called De Vulgare Eloquentia. Now, it's one I haven't played in a while, actually. But really what you're trying to do in this game is you're developing the Italian language. And the way you're going to do it is by kind of traveling around Italy, experiencing different things, leaving your influence markers around, picking up these books and manuscripts, and also becoming a religious leader. And so it's really very much a game about sort of exploring Italy and traveling around as efficiently as possible because, of course, you have to get the most points in the fewest possible turns, and you're trying to make the best use of your limited resources. And all the while, the ultimate goal is developing kind of modern Italian. It's it's not just a travel themed game, but it is a game where the travel aspect is really important, and as is a variety of other things. Anyway, it's a game I actually would like to get back to the table. I haven't played it in a good long time, but it's a really interesting one, De Vulgare Eloquentia. Let's go on to number 7. All right, number 7 is a game that is all about travel. It could have been on my list of games to play on the back of on an airplane tray table. Again, I'm still having trouble with that thing. But the game is called On Tour. And in On Tour, you are a band, and your goal is to have a tour of, well, in the base game, the U.S., but there's a bunch of other versions. There's one in, I think, New York and in Paris and in Europe. And what you're going to be doing, though, is there's some cards that are going to be flipped over, and then there's some dice that are going to be rolled, and it'll be a two-digit number you're trying to make. So 02 or 20. And you're going to place these numbers in circles at various spots in the U.S. And then at the end of the game, you're going to trace a route from lowest to highest to try and make the longest route possible from all the numbers that you've set up. So you're trying to build this path so that then your band can actually, well, travel across the U.S. and be on tour. And it's a game that I don't know that it's kind of been overlooked, I think, but it's a really interesting one. It's a lot of fun. It has these nice dry erase boards, and it works well in a variety of contexts, all about travel and going on tour. Let's go on now to my number 6. My number 6 is an older game that has recently come out with a couple of new additions. The original one came out in, I guess, 2006, and that's what I've got here to show. The game is called On the Underground. And so what you're doing in On the Underground is you're building this subway route, mostly in London. There's other versions. There's a version in Berlin, a version in, again, New York and Paris. For whatever reason, those two are often paired. I'm sorry. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to build these routes so that a single passenger will use your route more than anyone else's. Each time the passenger uses your route, you get a point. And the passenger is going to move in certain predictable ways, and so by building a route in such a way that the passenger really has to use your route to get where he wants to go, that's going to be your scoring, your big score. Now, each of the maps has other ways to score, and you're actually running usually three, sometimes even 4 colors that you kind of have access to, and each of them is a separate route, even though they're all owned by you. So if you can make the passenger use more of your routes, that's even better. So it's about building to places people will want to go, and also doing so in a manner that requires you kind of are incentivized to build inefficiently. But really, the game is all about this person traveling around London, trying to go to certain points of interest. Now, this, I believe, is the older map. The newer one's a little bit better looking, but either way, it's a good old game that has aged actually pretty well. My number 6 on the Underground. Let's go to number 5. Well, number 5, we're going to start talking about games that I talk about with more frequency here, and that's okay. Number 5 is a game about all about adventure and discovery and travel in a ship. That game is Forgotten Waters. Forgotten Waters, of course, you are members of a pirate crew, and your whole goal here is to sail around this map and experience all the adventures the high sea has to offer. There's a story you're playing through. There's narration and an app that's going on. There's sort of this choose your own adventure almost aspect as you take the turn and try different checks and different activities you can do. But mostly the game is all about this adventure you're going on as members of a ship, of a crew of a ship, all kind of traveling together. Very much travel focused, lots of fun, very interesting and entertaining game that really is, well, there's a couple other games that are like it, but they're kind of the game's younger brothers. So the game, this sort of as by itself, is really unlike anything else and is a lot of fun. Number 5, Forgotten Waters. Next up, number 4. Number 4 is a game, all right, thematically this game's a little weird, but it's also lots of fun. The game is Darwin's Journey. So Darwin's Journey, what you are doing is following sort of the journey of Charles Darwin. You're traveling around in a boat following the Beagle where it would have gone, I guess. And then you're also sending out explorers to explore these different islands. It's all about this sense of travel and trying to get where you want to go, but it's kind of also just about tracks. I mean, the travel aspect here is definitely a major part of the game. It's kind of 50% of the actions you take on your turn are going to be are available for travel almost. And so there's definitely a heavy travel aspect. It's just the travel is kind of moving up on tracks. So keep that in mind. It's not going to be as thematic as some of the other games on the list, but it is a great game. It's lots of fun, lots of interesting things to try and explore. Each time you play is going to be a little bit different as you travel around and explore and bring stuff back and try and get money and customize your workers and do a lot of other things. Anyway, I've talked about this a lot in a separate episode, so you can go and watch that if you want more information. It is my number 4 game about travel, Darwin's Journey. We're now down to the top 3. All right, number 3 is a game I have not talked about before because it's brand new, just recently arrived. And this game is all about travel. Where Darwin's Journey may have been a stretch, even though it has lots of travel in it, this game is not a stretch at all. This game is all about travel. The game is called Let's Go to Japan. And it's kind of weird that it has the exclamation point in there. You're kind of wondering if there's going to be a Let's Go to Korea or a Let's Go to New Zealand or whatever. But really what the game is about, oh, sorry, I got to pull up the picture here, is about planning your trip to Japan. And each day there's a variety of activities you can engage in, and you're going to end up playing 3 cards per day, and those are going to be sort of the story of your journey. And you're trying to sort of ultimately gain symbols and be able to score points for a variety of different things, but it's all really about kind of executing this game plan of planning your trip to Japan. And it's an interesting theme. It's really the most travel-y theme that I can think of, because it's all about planning your trip and then going on it. And your week in Japan is going to be amazing. I am going to be going to Japan hopefully later this year, and I plan to play Let's Go to Japan in Japan, which will just be fun. Anyway, good game about travel, a good drafting game, a great two-player game. The back and forth is just really nice, and it's okay solo as well. That's number 3. Let's go to Japan. Now, up next is my number 2. So my number 2 and number 1, I really wrestled with which one I would put first. And ultimately, I think I already know how it's going to be because I already made the list. But my number 2 is a game I really enjoy, and it could be either this or its sequel, which is equally as good, if not slightly better. And that game is Sleeping Gods. Sleeping Gods is a game where you are in this world, and you are, well, that's an interesting picture. You're going through this map, right? You've got this map that you're a ship in the first one, or a plane in the other, and you're sailing around this map having adventures. And that's really what the game is about. It's all about this travel as you go from A to B, and you kind of think, okay, I've got to come back here someday when I have X or Y. It's really a choose-your-own-adventure story, and it's more story than game, which is why, of course, it ends up on the number 2 slot, because it's very much story-driven. A lot of fun, though. I say that like it's a bad thing. It's a great time. It's very long. Be aware of that. I've talked about it a lot. The Distant Skies version is maybe slightly, just a tiny bit better, but also really good. Travel-focused, travel-heavy, lots of exploration as well. That is my number 2, Sleeping Gods. And now, let's go to my number 1. And this is a game where, again, there are really 2 games. There's the first one and the second. I'm about to sneeze. I hope I don't get a bloody nose like last time. So, trigger warning, I guess. The game is called The Voyages of Marco Polo. And this game is all about, well, the voyages of Marco Polo. There's a second one in service of the Khan or something that's kind of compatible, sort of. But what you're doing, well, mostly what you're doing in the game is fulfilling contracts. But really what you're trying to do is send your guy out on this journey to visit certain cities. And at the start of the game, you'll have a list of a couple of cities that it's your kind of ultimate mission to visit. And the more cities you visit, the more actions and abilities you'll unlock and bonuses you'll get. So it's all about trying to figure out how to enable yourself to kind of send your guy out on this travel action. It's a really fun game. It's a game that has aged very well. I think it came out in like the 2015 timeframe. And yet it's still one of my favorite games. It's just such a fun game. Ooh, I just want to play it right now as I'm talking about it. It's all about dice rolling and allocation, but you're never blocked. It's kind of a really interesting system. Great special abilities. That's what people will normally talk about it for. But kind of the whole backbone of this is Marco Polo's journeys to the Far East and then coming back. So there you go. My number 1 game about travel, The Voyages of Marco Polo. And with that, we are done with this top 10 list. And we're done with this episode of Wednesday Whimsy. That part's sad, but I'll be back again next week talking about something else. And I'll be back in the U.S. by then, so I won't actually be traveling. Anyway, I thank you for joining. I'm going to wish you safe travels and courage when you need it. And I hope to see you back again next time on another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. All right, bye-bye.